Welcome to Soccer Morning on Backheel.com. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome into Soccer Morning, Backheel.com. Big show to prepare you for the weekend coming up today right here. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, we'll discuss Mexico today. We'll discuss some big American moves today. Plenty of news, FIFA breaking news this morning. Plenty of things to talk about. Let's start with our guests today. In a couple of minutes, we're going to talk to Eric Gomez, our friend who covers Mexican soccer for FOX Deportes. He's down there in Mexico keeping an eye on a couple of things. Cubo, Torres, and that deal that will send the young striker to Chivas de Guadalajara for 6 months before he returns to MLS. Talk to Eric about who that satisfies exactly, if anybody. What this means for Cubo's future, for Guadalajara, for MLS, all of those things. Osvaldo Sanchez, perhaps announcing his retirement, longtime goalkeeper, Mexican goalkeeper, perhaps hanging him up, and then Diskerud to Tijuana. That's in the news as well. Reports at the moment, how close is that to being done? And then at 10:30 today, Kristan Heneage, based in the northwest of England, will join us to talk about a couple of things. Jozy Altidore's future is obviously top of mind for a lot of American fans. We've got the story of Brek Shea's return to MLS. That might be announced today. I know Orlando City's been teasing an announcement today. We'll see when that comes down and get Kristan's thoughts on that. And then there's a couple of games in England that are worth talking about as well. So we've got a bit of everything for you on today's show. We'll open up the phone lines at the end of the program as always. Get your thoughts, concerns, comments on whatever is on your mind. You can follow us at Soccer Morning on Twitter and hit us up with questions and comments. Let's do the headlines this morning. In the news, FIFA's top officials have, quote-unquote, unanimously agreed to publish, quote-unquote, legally appropriate version of the Garcia report. Remember, Michael Garcia, his report to FIFA on the bidding for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup, kept a secret. Can't tell anybody about it. Can't say what's in it, except for Joachim Eckert's terrible summary, which Michael Garcia took exception to. Now Michael Garcia has resigned, and FIFA's going to do... Is this the right thing? No, it's not. It's FIFA. We would never assume that they're going to do the right thing. What we're going to get out of FIFA, as they decide to release the report, is a heavily redacted version that basically says nothing. And I think this sets us up for some nice Twitter jokes. I saw some people this morning making Twitter jokes that the redacted version of the report will say World Cup, blank, 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 football, blank, 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 bidding, blank, 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 Chuck Blazer, blank, blank, blank. It's not going to say anything. We're not going to get a version that discloses all of the malfeasance happening in the world governing body. This is not going to happen. FIFA also did apparently not take up Theo Zwanzigers. He's an executive committee member. His proposal to give Qatar an ultimatum on their World Cup hosting in relation to the human rights abuses happening in that country. They seem to have just glossed right over that. Lots of talk in the last couple of days that he was going to bring to FIFA's executive committee a proposal that said, hey, Qatar, get your crap together, or we might take the World Cup away. There's no mention of that today after the meetings in Morocco, so this is apparently not happening. As I mentioned, Diskerud reportedly close to signing with Club Tijuana. This would be a big move for Mix, an interesting move in relation to his decision not to come back or come to MLS. And of course, we've had Diskerud dance around with MLS clubs in the past. He was once a target of the Portland Timbers. That fell through, perhaps because the league didn't want to make him a DP at that point. And that's what Merritt Paulson said at the time. He also danced with Columbus not too long ago. And that reportedly fell through because of Mix's dad. So if Diskerud goes to Club Tijuana, what does that mean exactly for MLS? I'm not sure it means a whole lot. Lots of talk out there that, hey, Mix likes San Diego. He can live in San Diego, play in TJ. Everybody's happy. Everybody's going to be happy. So we'll talk about that issue, of course, with Eric Gomez in a couple of minutes. Mario Balotelli accepts a one-match ban from the Football Association for his ill-advised Instagram post. If you don't remember, this was his Super Mario image. It was offensive. There's no getting around the fact that it was offensive from a racial standpoint. Mario apparently has learned his lesson, has issued an apology to Liverpool fans for making a mistake, and now will suffer a one-match ban for that mistake. The U.S. women's national team has been number one in the world in the women's game since March of 2008. March of 2008. Well, today that changed. They are now number 2 behind Germany, so that 6-year-plus run is over. 6.5 years that the U.S. women's national team was number 1 in the world. They are now number 2. Of course, all of this is important. FIFA rankings are FIFA rankings. We know what they mean. Not a whole lot. But this is important only because it is a psychological blow to the U.S. ahead of a World Cup next year in Canada. They are playing currently in Brazil in a mini tournament. They're going to take on Brazil for the title in that tournament. They've already lost to Brazil once. Marta scored a hat trick. There are questions over whether or not Jill Ellis is getting the best out of that team, whether or not the new generation of American players is going to live up to the legacy of the older generation of American players. Tactically, strategically, technically, are they nearly as good as they used to be, or is the world catching up? Lots of questions around the U.S. women's national team, again, as they head into a World Cup in 2015, a World Cup that they will want to win, expect to win. Haven't won one since 1999. Don't forget that. Now, of course, they have the luxury of having won one. They have the luxury of being one of the top teams in the world. The men would trade for that in a second. So it's just all relative, but it still is troubling if you're a women's national team fan. RSL has made a trade. They have shipped Sebastian Velasquez, the young midfielder with the crazy hair, to NYCFC for allocation money. This is, again, Jason Christ collecting some pieces from his old club. He must see something in Sebastian Velasquez he can get out of that player in New York. And there now seems to be a very real shift happening in Salt Lake City. Whether or not this is Jeff Cassar's doing, perhaps someone higher up. Obviously, Craig Weibel has taken over as technical director. We've been talking to RSL, trying to get Craig Weibel on this show. I don't think it's going to happen. Well, it's not going to happen today, and I'm about to lay out the schedule for Soccer Morning in terms of the holidays and a little vacation for me coming up. So it doesn't look like we'll be able to talk to Craig Weibel until next year, 2015. But it does seem to be that there's a shift happening at Real Salt Lake, and after all of their success since 2009 when they lifted that MLS Cup, that surprising MLS Cup over the LA Galaxy, they have been a standard bearer in MLS, especially from a small market perspective. I believe they're still the smallest market in MLS, and they've been competitive on the top level for a long time. With Jason Christ gone, with Garth Lagerwey reportedly on his way to Seattle, Craig Weibel stepping in, some changes at the top. Jeff Cassar did a yeoman's job in his first year as a head coach. What's going to change for RSL? They're going to look very different in 2015. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Eric Gomez will join us. We've got a lot of things to talk about with Eric. It should be a fascinating discussion mix. Osvaldo Sanchez, Cubo Torres. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, backheel.com.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning. Joined now on the telephone. Eric Gomez covers Mexican football for Fox. Eric Gomez Fox is his Twitter handle. You should be following him. Eric, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great this morning. How about you?
I'm not too bad. This is and I haven't told our audience yet, but this is the last show of 2014 for us around here. So getting ready for a little bit of a break. But ahead of that, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the world of Mexican soccer. Certainly as it relates to some American topics. And I'm going to start with Cubo Torres and the news that broke yesterday that he will return to Chivas de Guadalajara, but only on loan, that MLS has exercised the option to purchase his contract. He'll play the Clausura with Chivas and then return to MLS. From your perspective, is this the kind of deal that makes everybody happy? Is everybody sort of, oh, this is the best we could do in this situation? Where does it land?
Well, first of all, this is quite interesting, at least to me. Cubo Torres is his last bit of, I guess you want to call it, his last bit of posturing before this deal went down was to tell media in Guadalajara earlier this week that he had no preference whether he stayed in Mexico or whether he moved on to MLS eventually. He knew that the decision was pretty much out of his hands, at least for MLS to exercise that option. So what ended up happening was he took a trip to Miami. He was at the a certain TV network's sports awards, and he was told there. And the person who told him was a fellow active player. So he had no idea what was going on. He was quite disconnected, I guess, from the final negotiations. But he I think he has a golden opportunity to really kind of salvage Chivas' campaign, and he has an opportunity to move on to pastures, whatever happens beyond the Clausura. So I think, everybody's happy at this point.
Do we know? I imagine that this, from an MLS perspective, it may just be, let's not, we want to keep Cubo in MLS. He's become a star here. He's got potential to be a connection to a demographic that they've long been trying to curry favor with. But at the same time, they don't want to completely piss off a club the size of Guadalajara if they're going to be doing more and more business with Liga MX clubs as time goes on. Is it something like that, or is it just a matter of we're throwing them a bone? I mean, how do you look at it from MLS, the league's perspective?
No, I don't think they're throwing them a bone. I think this is directly in correlation to the fact that the Galaxy passed on him. I think that he's not 100% sold, or at least his agent and his family. Again, Torres is 21 years old. He is a 100% all Mexican, wholesome kid who still lives with his parents. Brought his family along to Los Angeles while he was on loan with Chivas USA. His family and himself, they absolutely loved the city.
Right.
And they were very much willing to stay in Los Angeles if they were going to stay with MLS. Now that option, at least for now, is off the table, who knows what might happen 6 months down the road. I think there is a little bit of worry on MLS's side that they won't be able to convince him to go to Houston, to go to Seattle, to go anywhere else. And I know I listened to my buddy Tom Marshall talk to you guys last week and saying, well, why wouldn't he want to go anywhere else? Well, I think the decision is not completely just Eric Torres and me being a 21-year-old kid and wanting to take over the world. This is more or less a family issue, and it's not something that he's going to take that lightly because he's going to bring his Torres entourage with him. Mm-hmm. So that is, I think, the lingering point at this moment. I didn't want to spring a, hey, you're going to Houston moment on him, especially without consulting it. So now the job is with MLS's PR people, with Houston's PR people, or with whatever team he's going to be going into play with in 2015 when he comes back to MLS. Yeah,
so they're putting off the decision. They're putting off the mechanism because we know this is being MLS. They can't just ship him to the highest bidder. They're going to have to find some way to allocate him to whatever club he ends up with. And as you said, maybe this buys them time to convince him to take a chance on another city if the Galaxy aren't available. I don't think there's anything to the notion that they would let him go on loan to Mexico until LA2 starts up, Eric. That seems like way too long of a period to have Cubo Torres away from MLS if he actually is going to be part of your next generation of young players.
Yeah, that would not be the right thing to do from any perspective. I think you take a huge risk for Torres to get injured, for Torres' level to either dip or to reach the height where MLS is no longer a real possibility and he's being carried off Europe. So I think 6 months is a perfect amount of time for them to realize what it is that they want to do, but also for Torres to kind of come to the conclusion to say, okay, well, I'm not going to be staying in Los Angeles. What does Houston have to offer me? What does Seattle have to offer? What does New York have to offer? If it is Houston, I spoke to their management team about a month ago for something unrelated, and I did bring up the question of Cubo Torres, knowing full well that the expansion draft coming up and that Torres' fate was not yet sealed. Little did I know then that Houston was going to become a major player for Torres, at least in the last reports that we've read. They told me that their focus is not to get the best Hispanic player available, not to get the best Latino player available, but to get the best players available. But I did hearken back to the times of Dom Kinnear, where it certainly did seem that race, or at least nationality, was an issue with that team. Now, the answer that I got from Houston was very, very smart. And they said, well, you do know who one of our part owners is, right? Oscar de la Hoya. Mm-hmm. The fact is, every last Latin American player that we've had join the Dynamo in the last 2-3 years has been completely swayed and starstruck by having Oscar de la Hoya in tow. I think that is a huge, huge positive for Houston. And if they want to get in on the Torres sweepstakes and they want to make sure that they land him in 6 months or whatever, that's going to be a pretty big selling point for them, to use Oscar de la Hoya, to use their world-class stadium, to use their world-class facilities to their advantage and say, hey, really, this is not a joke. And plus, you're going to be in a city that is just absolutely rife with Mexican Americans and a Latino community in general. So it's definitely a strong, a strong 6 months for Torres coming up to find out where he's going to be going and whether he's going to be satisfied with that allocation.
Yeah, it's a recruitment process. We'll see how it goes. I also think there's something, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but if you're looking for a silver lining for MLS, who, as you said, can't drop the decision on him right now, is sort of buying time with the loan to Chivas. And again, Chivas needs help. They're going through a relegation fight. They're obviously things haven't gone well there for a while, and maybe Cubo can inject some life into that team. But they're also getting a guaranteed storyline for the summer up here, and I don't know that you can really. This is a league that still needs to generate sort of those off the field things, Eric. Whether it's a rumor, whether it's speculation over where Cubo Torres ends up is actually a benefit to MLS, even if they still have to figure out how they're going to get him wherever he needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think. It truly is going to be a 6 month. It might even extend itself, the situation, not because he's going to stay in the Liga MX, but because he's probably going to be playing in the Gold Cup or in the Copa America. I think after that, you give him a rest. And I don't think you see Cubo Torres in an MLS kit until August, really, just because he's going to be playing up until May. Then he's going to be with the national team, and then you need to give him a rest. So it does give them a little bit more time. I think it becomes an interesting storyline for everyone involved, because let's say Chivas does save itself from relegation, which I am 100% sure is going to. Then there begs the question of whether he becomes that team's goal scorer, he becomes that team's savior, scores 10, 12 goals, puts them maybe even in the playoffs. Then there's going to be a lot of questions raised from that fan base and saying, why couldn't we keep this guy?
Right.
Why would you give MLS, whatever the amount of money was? I'm hearing $7.5 million is the most oft-quoted figure. Why would you give MLS an opportunity to buy this young developing, blossoming player that has been in our youth system since he was old. Chivas is not a small club. I don't think that they were smart in trying to price tag Torres from the get-go. I think that they were trying to put an amount of money that they would say was unreachable from MLS, or saying unfeasible. Well, they're not going to pay $7.5 million for Cubo Torres. Well, they did, and I think part of the reason why negotiations were so quiet for Chivas a couple of days ago when we were covering the Liga MX draft here in Mexico City, it was just so difficult to predict what they were going to do, because there were talks that they would actually plunk down the $7.5 million and pay it back and just have Cubo Torres. But since they're in such a precarious situation, since they have an overflow of strikers at this point, none of which I would say are at Cubo Torres' level, I think the best option for them was to just say, they're going to take him eventually. We need to get some money in, and we need to start building towards 2015 and beyond. So let's take what we can get. The storyline for Mexico is going to be, and this was something that Houston dabbled in the past with Luis Angel Landin. I think it was 2007, 2008. Might have been later than that. They want to start attracting young Mexican talent into that league. Cubo Torres is the gateway drug for that. If they're able to transform Cubo Torres into a world-class striker, which they certainly have done their part so far, I would definitely advocate that you would get a few Mexican stars moving into MLS, especially with opportunities growing a little bit more difficult to come by with certain clubs, certain big clubs. I mean, America has 10 foreign-born players on their roster. Tigres has 10 foreign-born players on their roster. Tijuana, it seems, if you're not Mexican-American, they're not going to take a chance on you if you're young and quite simply Mexican. Right. So it's going to be very interesting to see beyond that.
You mentioned TJ, you mentioned Tijuana. Let's talk about them, because there are reports out there that Mix Diskerud, the Norwegian-American U.S. international, may be headed to Tijuana. This is sort of out of left field, but it starts to click in just a little bit more the more you think about it, Eric. First of all, how close is this to happening based on what you know and from your perspective? Mix in Liga MX, a good fit?
Yeah, I reached out to people within the TJ organization, and I reached out to people who cover Xolos. I think the people who cover Xolos were especially surprised. They had no idea that this was going on. It definitely is a smart fit. The one person that I was able to talk to, that source, told me that that they have an active dossier on Mexican American players, but they also have an active dossier on select American players that have been recommended by Joe Corona, by Greg Garza, at the time Herculez Gomez. So I think what we need to take away from this is the MO of the Tijuana organization, which is absolutely fantastic in my view, to say, hey, which one of the guys that you play with on the national level, regardless of them not being Mexican American, would be a good fit for this team. Diskerud, as you all know, out of contract, sold his place in Norway, definitely looking for a new team, threw out a few cryptic tweets over the last few days. Joe Corona is selling him hard. They're really good friends. They are an absolute dynamo when it comes to a friendship duo and a soccer duo, of course. And Joe's been selling him hard on Tijuana. It's very simple, you know. You play for a team that is going to pay you an above average salary, whether it's MLS, whether it's Liga MX. You choose your team, which is a huge deal.
Yes.
MLS is not going. I mean, MLS is going to allocate you. They're going to let current teams fight over you. Liga MX, if you're coming in from abroad, you're going to choose whatever team you want. Tijuana is a huge draw for anybody because it offers you the opportunity to play in a city that is truly passionate about its team, but also allows you to live across the border in San Diego and enjoy the American lifestyle, which is, I think, part of the reason many players have been attracted to that city in the past, regardless of their nationality. So yeah, this is a definite possibility. I know that there are some pretty big issues that are still being discussed, mainly salary. Tijuana I think the perception is that they can pay anybody whatever they want because of their ownership group, because of the business ventures that they own. That's not really the case, and they've been struggling to come up with cash for about a year now. They had to sell off two of their biggest stars, Dario Benedetto and Kristan to America for about $9 million. So that money is coming in nicely for this situation, but they've also got a couple of the Diskerud should be making I want to say about $1.5 million when all's done per year, but we're not there yet. So they still need to hash out a couple of details.
Well, let you. I think it would be remiss of me not to mention the likely retirement of Osvaldo Sanchez. You mentioned before we came on the air, he'd still be looking for some opportunities, but if he can't find a club and certainly play, he's used to a certain level, he is a name, then maybe it's time for him to hang it up. Which is most likely at this point?
Yeah, he was making $3 million in his first Santos Laguna contract, which ran through, I think it was 2011. Then he took a pay cut. He made $2.5 million a year. Still one of Liga MX's better paid players in his last 7-8 seasons with Santos Laguna. He doesn't want to take a significant pay cut. Leones Negros in Guadalajara, they made him an offer. He did not want to take it because it was significantly less money. He was going to go to Puebla. Puebla was not able to offer him money that he wanted as well. And right now his only options are to go to Costa Rica with either Deportivo Saprissa or Liga Jolense and maybe even play the remainder of the CONCACAF Champions League 2015, or to go to MLS. There has been absolutely no concrete interest, at least from MLS, especially to pay him what he's asking for. He's closer to 42 years old than he is to 41 at this point. He's still very effective, but it's just not very good wisdom. He's 42 years old about even $1 million a year to come play for you. So I think we will be hearing that Osvaldo Sanchez will retire. Career. I think he's been active since he was 19 with Atlas back in 1993. Yep. 20 years old might have been. Yep. Yeah, World Cup keeper, just a great goalkeeper for Mexico. Top 3, I would say.
It is a shame though. I got to run. We don't. I completely forgot to talk about Herculez Gomez and his move back to Puebla, but we'll end a different day. It is kind of sad. It looks like, if this is correct, that Sanchez has 99 caps for Mexico. He's not going to get to that 100th cap. That's a little sad.
You know what? I think he has one of those unofficial caps against a B team or a club team.
Okay.
And the last time he played, they made a show to say that he had gotten to 100 caps. So I think in his mind and the FMF's mind, he's got 100 caps, which is fine. One last little thing, Herculez Gomez. Herculez is not 100% sold on going back to Puebla.
Okay.
He will talk it over. I think his options remain open. He has been negotiated to that team, but you know what? We see it many times in League MX, and we see it many times with that so-called draft. Deals go through just because the players don't want to go back to that club. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case with Herc, but we might see him. We might see a little bit of a wrinkle from him when it comes to news in the coming days.
Eric Gomez Fox on Twitter, covering soccer for FOX Deportes down there. Make sure you're following him, tweeting in both Spanish and English for those of us who are not bilingual. Eric, appreciate your time, man, as always. Thanks a lot.
Happy holidays, guys.
Yep.
Everybody out there listening, and Happy New Year.
We'll talk to you. Yeah, we'll talk to you in 2015. All right, when we come back, Kristan Heneage will join us to talk some England news, some Americans in England or leaving England, perhaps. It's Soccer Morning on backheel.com. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. I turn my camera.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning, and joined now on the telephone, transatlantic telephone, by Kristan Heneage, who covers all things for many places, among them ESPN, ITV, Sky Sports. You can follow him on Twitter, Keneage. All right. Can you hear me? We may have some issues.
Yes, okay.
There we go. All right. Are you with me? All right. Let's try to make it through this before our line completely craps out. Chris, let me start with there's a couple of things that are happening, at least when it comes to American players in England. We may have an exodus, a mini exodus, if you will, coming up. We know that Brek Shea is reportedly on his way to Orlando City, but I'm going to start with Jozy Altidore and the situation at Sunderland. Guess what gets in the news saying, hey, we need a striker. That doesn't bode well for Jozy.
Yes, it's not exactly the vote of confidence I imagine he was looking for, but I think in fairness, he himself knew some time ago now that his Sunderland career was likely coming to an end. Lille, from what I'm hearing, are the strong after trying in the summer and failing, because the club didn't want more players to leave, knowing that a few would already be departing potentially on free transfers. I think they also expected a change in the second season. Perhaps he'd become acclimatized slightly, but in truth, I'm in the middle of actually writing, and it basically argues the point that they shouldn't have expected any change because they didn't change the way that he played football. For me, Poy actually touched on part of the reason why he struggled, and he said the reason he started Jozy against West Ham was because he's good at getting in behind, and that's something that Stephen Fletcher necessarily doesn't have. And I even joked on Twitter that it's taken them 18 months to give him the ball to feet facing goal, where he can run at people and actually use his attributes. Because to me, he's not a target man in the traditional sense. No. He looks big, but he's not incredibly strong. His hold-up play is good at times, but I wouldn't say consistently enough to be that target. And for me, the fact that they've never really accommodated to his style, poorly played, admittedly, is a big factor as to why this has been such a poor move for him in his career.
I think it's a combination of those two things, and unfortunately for Jozy, he hasn't played well, and I'm not sure he made that behind closed doors. And Sunderland certainly has not changed things enough to fit his style. Maybe that's not what you're supposed to do, but you pay that much for a striker. Then you certainly want to get the most out of him. So what's the immediate future? I mean, is Jozy likely to move on in January, or is he going to stick out? Is there a potential for him to be...
I think he's going to have to move. I think that there's no real option. I think France is a good option for him. In truth, I think the physicality is greater than the Dutch league. There's less space than the defenders might give you in the Dutch league as well, and so it's not a step back in the sense that I think it's a step diagonally, because it's still high level. You can still get to a decent standard in the Champions League. You have to play against PSG and good quality defenders there. So I think certainly, look, there are players who were better on paper that have failed in the Premier League. Diego Forlan is perhaps the one that sticks out to me, and who then went on to forge very good careers away from England. And so I think, or at least personally, I get sad frustrated when I see people write him off as a terrible striker, this cart horse of a player, just because he hasn't thrived in the Premier League with two teams, one that put him out onto the wing, and the other that didn't even give him a chance to play to his strengths.
It'll be interesting to see. As you said, France is probably a good option for Jozy, and not necessarily a step backward, despite the fact, I mean, Ligue 1 is not the Premier League. But then again, I mean, we're talking about Sunderland. I'm going to move to another American who, again, I mentioned Brek Shea already, leaving Stoke, headed to Orlando City, and there are some difficult questions for American soccer fans when it comes to whether or not going and failing in England is the type of thing that will get you paid more when you come back to MLS, because it certainly seems to be the case with Brek Shea. But before I get to that question, Kristan, what went wrong for Shea? I mean, is this a matter of poor cultural fit, not adjusting to the environment, not being the right player? For whatever, I mean, it never, even on loan to various places, it never worked for Brek.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I caught one of his first games for Stoke against Fulham, and the pace seemed to catch him out a little bit. He looked a little bit frightened at just how quickly the ball was moving and how quickly the defenders were coming to him. Because if we remember Shea at Dallas, one of the kind of standout images was him just breezing past defenders as if they were running in treacle. And yet, when he was at that opportunity, because no sooner had he got the ball to feet, he was being closed down. I think because coaches knew that that's what he wanted to do, and thus was saying, right, as soon as he gets the ball, get onto him straight away so he can't turn. The loan moves, I think Barnsley kind of explains itself. He got a little bit, too heated with one moment. I don't think he fully understood the dynamic between fans and players in England, and that actually, if you do something like that, the club are always going to side with the fans and the paying public, irrespective of what's said to you. And I think certainly, at least in Dallas, I imagine he never received even quite the half the level of vitriol that he did when he was playing in Barnsley against Huddersfield. Again, a fierce rivalry that I imagine he wasn't too familiar with. And then at Birmingham, you could say it's just bad luck because that club is in a very difficult position at the minute. It's sacked its coach. It's having a lot of money troubles. It had troubles with Carson Young, the owner, and a potential criminal record coming forth. And it wasn't the best move. I mean, I first heard about the potential move to Orlando in the summer. I know Toronto wanted him as well as a possible option, but they couldn't agree a deal. And so while I think certainly you can say, is it fair for someone like him to come back and get more money when there are guys who've stayed here and are on a higher trajectory in that sense and a better momentum on less money? But I would put to you that maybe he was underpaid at Dallas. Maybe he should have been on more money in that instance. And I think you can't really, blame him for the fact that maybe the money in Major League Soccer has become better since he was here.
Kristan, let me just break in here because Twitter's going crazy about this right now as we speak with this announcement looming. And there are some people making the very good point that there's been no disclosure as to what he'll make in Orlando City. And he was making $350,000 a year when he left FC Dallas to go to Stoke. So it's possible. I mean, whether he's a designated player or not may matter, but it's possible he's not going to make that much more on his return to MLS than he was before. And you could still argue that as a fringe U.S. international and as he's still a young player, at least in an American context, that he is worth that to an American team where he will be more comfortable.
Exactly. I mean, again, from what I've heard, he will not be a designated player, which I think is something to note at least. And there was a lot of furore about Mo Edu coming back in the league, not wanting to sanction his deal. You could argue, if you look at it from paper, as you just said, Brek's a young player. He's got a lot of years ahead of him still. If he hits that level that he was at with Dallas, albeit a very short period of his career to date, then you've arguably got a player who's worth more than $350,000 a year. So I think in that sense, the moves that Orlando have made, I think, have been very shrewd to this point. And I don't think they're looking to do anybody favours, Brek Shea included. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, I think that while we can certainly bemoan the figures that he's earning, it's also fair to say that I would put good money on it, $350,000, you could say, that Brek Shea will be worth the money that Orlando have invested in him, because we know he can thrive in this league if he's given the right place to do it. And I think Orlando is that place.
It seems like, I mean, this is there's this I don't even know how to properly frame this, Kristan. Again, it's whatever the money is for Brek Shea, you can certainly argue this is a very soft landing for him after failing in England. But then we get to the question of whether or not we should be blaming Brek Shea. I mean, he certainly had the highly publicized issue with the fans there. I forget where he was on loan. You may have already mentioned it. And maybe we are imagining that Brek Shea made his own bed when he failed in England, and therefore it's not right. It seems unfair that he would get a soft landing in MLS. I mean, I don't know why American fans would necessarily be concerned with this, but there does seem to be some of that right and wrong element to this.
It does, I think, mirror the biblical story of the prodigal son. It seems as if he was the one who ran off to Europe and is now benefiting back home, while there are those guys who stayed and hustled and maybe aren't getting those same opportunities. I think what you have to say is, look, I'd be worried if a player wasn't ambitious and didn't want to try Europe and the Premier League and someone like Stoke City. Again, where he's going to be with Cameron, where he's going to be with Moadu, and guys that, again, will help him settle. I think, the fact that him and Jeff pretty much hang out all the time tells you that it was an important thing for him to have guys around him and probably made the transition easier. What he couldn't help was the fact that in Tony Pulis, he had a manager that I don't think really was going to play that type of winger, because he preferred wingers that could cross the ball and, yes, would get to the byline, put in really good delivery 5-10 yards before that. And from what I've seen, Shea's never really been that type to swing a ball in a traditional sense of what we imagine a winger. And then you've got Mark Hughes. By at that point, him and Moadu are kind of really down the pecking order then at anyway. And even for all the talk of, he's got a clean slate, he's got a fresh chance, I don't really think he did, because I imagine he'll have been well aware of what was happening at Barnsley, at the U21 games, the development squad games he was playing at, and in truth he wasn't setting those alight. I think you should never discourage any player from the US from not wanting to try Europe and go there, because without wishing to sound too much like Jurgen Klinsmann, at the minute it is a higher level, and you want your players to be playing at a higher level. And I think for Shea to test himself there, I imagine even though he's not played in the Premier League a great deal, he'll have learned a significant amount while he'll have been there. And in many ways, I would argue that will now benefit the league, because he'll come back and you would imagine he'll impart that wisdom on his team, maybe on guys like Amobi Akubu. And the league benefits in that sense as well. So I think it's a little bit harsh to frame him as this kind of selfish individual for wanting to try Europe and then deciding, actually, I'm not playing at all. It's better to be where I'm playing.
Yeah, it is interesting. It does, the Shea move, which again is supposed to be confirmed today at 1 p.m. Eastern in Orlando. The potential for Jozy to move on. If he moves on to France, that's a little less of a blow in the sense of Americans playing in Europe than if he came back to MLS. But these two moves will further cull the American presence in the Premier League. In fact, Tim Howard and Jeff Cameron are the only names I could come up with right now. Kristan, if I'm missing anybody at the top level, I know there's some other players down in the second and third division, I can't remember them. What do you think this says anything about the larger issue of American players in England? Is there something, in general, Americans in Europe have sort of taken a step back recently. Is this a cyclical issue? What do you think it is?
I think there's a degree of bad fortune, certainly in the case of Jozy, as we've touched on. But I'm very wary to group nationalities together and say that this one is good or this one is bad. I certainly know that there's a stereotypical image amongst people that maybe don't see the US as much, that actually American players aren't as good as possible, as good as required, and that actually outside of goalkeepers you're not getting a great deal. I personally think the World Cup completely trounces all over that view, because you look at the US, they got far further than England did and were far better. I just think at the minute maybe the kind of player that's required in the Premier League isn't really being produced by the US. I also think that of the players who are getting their opportunities, it's very hard to break into the Premier League, and that's not just for American players, that's even for English players if you think about it. Newcastle are kind of a rare break from that tradition in having, I think it's 5 or 6 Geordies in their team at the minute, or players from the academy in the team. And so I think there's no shame for Americans having a difficulty in getting in there, because you kind of got to be something special. And equally, I always look at it from the point of, if you've spent, let's say, 10 million on a defender and 2.5 million on Jeff Cameron or Moadu from Rangers, you're going to really want to push with the guy that you spent 10 million on,
right?
Unless the guy who is 2.5 million is exponentially better and really can't be dropped. And I think that's harming them to a degree as well, the fact that they're not commanding those huge transfer fees, which to me, I see it as part of the reason that Tony Pulis went to MLS so often, was the fact that the value for money is just significantly better at the minute.
Kristan Heneage, covering all sorts of soccer from the northwest of England, usually. Follow him on Twitter. It's KHENEAGE on Twitter. Thank you very much for your time, Kristan. I appreciate your insight, man.
Pleasure, mate. Speak to you soon.
There you go. I think Kristan is approaching 10 Soccer Morning Caps, which is a pretty good haul. I was counting that a little bit earlier. All right, let me come back. Phone lines will be open. Twitter machine will be running. It's up to you. You want to talk Jozy? You want to talk Brek? talk Mexican stuff, mixed Diskerud. It's all open. BackHeel.com. Be right back.
On her way, but hold her down with soggy clothes and breeze blocks. Shivers in your fever, scream me again. Never kisses, or do you ever send a full stop?
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on backheel.com with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning. I may have misspoke when I said Kristan Heneage is based in the northwest of England. I'm pretty sure he's in the northeast of England, and I probably offended him on some level. It's one of those things like you don't want to get wrong. It can be a big deal. If you say someone's from some place they're not from, and there's that rivalry, yeah, I'm sure that would get get some people upset. I apologize to Kristan. All right. Speaking of England, you do have some interesting games coming up this weekend. I was looking at the schedule. I believe Newcastle and Sunderland's this weekend, as a matter of fact. Will Jozy get a run out for Sunderland against Newcastle? I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath at this point. January window opens very, very soon, and we will have an opportunity to see if Jozy can move on, perhaps to France, as has been rumored for quite some time. All right. And then take this opportunity. Phone lines are open, 347-756-6276. We are on Twitter, at Soccer Morning. But I'm going to take this opportunity to lay out the Soccer Morning holiday schedule. And it basically goes like this. Today is our last show until January 8th. Let this sink in for just a minute, and then I'm going to apologize. This is our last show until January 8th. Essentially, we're going to take the Christmas week off, and then I've got a bit of vacation coming up, and we will be back on January 8th. I'm just going to put it out there. If you want to yell at me and scream at me, you can do that on Twitter, at Soccer Morning. You can do that on the phone lines, 347-756-6276. I'll be happy to take your abuse. Be happy to take your abuse. I know it's a long period of time. I don't know, how many days is that? Should I even count the days, Trevor? Or should I just say, we'll be back on January 8th. Please don't hate us. We may have a better, stronger, higher quality show when we come back. We'll see about that. And we may have some news on some other fronts. We'll see. Lots of things happening in the background here. Stuff we can't talk about. We're not going to talk about. Stuff that's not even close to being done. But just to give people a sense of where we're at, because as the Soccer League sponsorship ended, there may have been some concern. We're on backheel.com for now. We're not going anywhere. So it's not like I'm going to say today's the last show ever. We're never coming back. No. Coming back January 8th, 2015. Look forward to it. All right. So you've got, as I mentioned, you got the Sunderland, Newcastle this weekend in the Premier League. A couple of other big games on the schedule as well. I'm not sure Man City Crystal Palace rises to the big game level, but Liverpool and Arsenal at Anfield certainly has a big game feel about it. We know that Liverpool continues to struggle a bit in the league, at least in comparison to last year's run to second place and a near title in 2013, 2014. All the way down there in 11th, Liverpool. So just back where they were. I mean, to a certain extent. I'm not sure mid-table was where they were. But things are tight. things are, once you get past Chelsea and Man City, things are pretty tight. Manchester United, 31 points. West Ham, 28. Southampton, 26. Arsenal, 26. Spurs, 24. Newcastle, 23. So it's pretty tight from second down to Liverpool, perhaps. Down to Everton. Everton to Liverpool, both on 21. And I saw this question posed and answered at ESPNFC the other day. It fascinates me, considering the way things started, considering the heat that Louis van Gaal was taking, considering that people were saying, hey, Louis van Gaal actually did worse in his opening stretch as Manchester United manager than David Moyes did. Manchester United, a legitimate title contender, 8 points back of Chelsea at this point. I don't think anybody's catching Chelsea. But if you include a couple of teams behind Chelsea as contenders, certainly City, they're only 3 points back. They're in the mix. Manchester United, are they really? 414, you're on the air.
Oh, yes, I'd like to talk about Cubo Torres.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, I think it's from a marketing perspective, this is a win, but from a player perspective, you're asking a lot from a 21-year-old to go to three different and perform well on three different teams in just over a year.
That's a good point. But he knows Chivas de Guadalajara. I mean, he's been there. He came through their system. It's not like that's a completely new and foreign experience for him. He's played for them. This is not. It's not necessarily. If you dropped him into Houston and said score goals, maybe that would be more difficult. But that's not what's going to happen. And hopefully, as Eric Gomez said, maybe they can start to really sow the seeds of what city, wherever he ends up in MLS, will be the right fit for him, and he can become comfortable with that. Especially if he's not taking time off during the Gold Cup, he'll be playing, but certainly, or he'll be in the team. But certainly during that period, he'll have the opportunity to sort of adjust his brain to the idea of playing for somebody else.
Right. And, also, from another American perspective, they also signed Isaac Brizuela.
Who
Chivas.
did? Chivas did. Correct, right.
And I think Gomez is kind of right. Eric Gomez is kind of right with that trio of Fierro, Brizuela, and Torres actually do something. How do you sell that you're selling off this player to the Chivas fan base when you got to win championships now? Because you're looking up at Club America.
Well, I mean, they're so far from winning championships, and I know there are high expectations, Guadalajara. I appreciate the phone call, and I know I know Chivas fans have high expectations, but considering where they are and the fact they're going to have to stave off relegation, and I'm with Eric Gomez on this. No matter what happens to Guadalajara, even if they are technically technically supposed to be relegated, something will change. An ownership shakeup will happen. They'll fix things so that Chivas stays in Liga MX. But even if, whatever, considering where they are, Chivas fans should be happy just to climb back up, maybe get into the playoffs and get into La Guia in the Clausura. I mean, if they manage that would be stunning at this point. 818, you're on the air.
Hey, this is Jason in New Jersey. Just want to ask about the Club World Cup. Would it make the competition any more special if an MLS team won the CONCACAF Champions League and went to play in that competition? I mean, look at Cruz Azul. They went over, they play one game, and they get spanked 4-0 by Real Madrid. I mean, just doesn't seem all that special this tournament at this point.
It's a strange thing. It's smack dab in the middle of the European season. It's in the off season. If an MLS team ever makes it, it's in the off season for an MLS team. And if you let's say an MLS team, and knock on wood, and who knows if it'll ever happen, wins the CONCACAF Champions League, they have to then, if they're in the playoffs, that makes their season long. They've got all of that. Let's say they don't make the playoffs. You're just going to keep training and training and training until December comes around, and you have to go to wherever it is, Morocco or Qatar or Japan, to play in that tournament. I don't know. I don't know what could make that tournament a bigger deal. Certainly from an MLS fan standpoint, if an MLS team made it, we would care. But I don't know that it has any real value outside of, I don't know. I mean, Real Madrid's trying. They're playing. They played a very, very strong lineup against Cruz Azul. So perhaps that's an indication that they want that trophy, and maybe that'll bring some prestige to it. I mean, some of the European clubs, it would be nice to see a change in the final. If the final 1 year could not be the Copa Lib champion versus the Champions League champion, if that were just 1 year, you get a mix of that, maybe. But you realize that Oceania is never going to make it. They're not good enough. The AFC champion's probably not going to be good enough. MLS and Liga MX, I'm sorry, not MLS, but Liga MX clubs who have won the CONCACAF Champions League for time immemorial, they're generally not good enough, especially considering the changes from one split season to the next in Mexico in terms of players. I mean, that was the question with Cruz Azul. Were they even remotely good enough to compete? Well, they had to come back to beat Auckland City, and then they get crushed by Real Madrid. Trevor's got the only thing that will make it relevant to the United States short of an MLS team going, and even then you've got time issues and when it's happening, and that's host it in the U.S.
That's great feedback, and I just want to recommend everybody go to backheel.com because the behind-the-scenes video about you was awesome. It puts a new perspective on the show for sure. I
appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that was done by Arch Rivals. It's a mini documentary, a documentary film group. Greg Papora and the guys over at Arch Rivals did a fantastic job putting that together. If you haven't seen it, I feel like everybody's seen it, or if you haven't, you chose not to watch it because, hey, who the hell cares? But you should watch it for Arch Rivals because they're doing excellent work documenting some interesting things happening in American soccer. I know they've got some very cool ideas. So support them even if you're not interested in the behind the scenes here at Soccer Morning. 347-756-6276. Let me check and see what's going on Twitter here. Eddie in Brooklyn, thanks. Thanks, Davis. Jason, I'll blame you when I lose my mind watching Skip Bayless instead. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not mean my vacation coming up was not intended to force you to watch Skip Bayless. Find something else. There's got to be something else on from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern every day. Third String All-Star, excuse me. Third String All-Star giving us some best wishes for the break. Appreciate that. And Wesley says, is Back Heel going to be a permanent home for Soccer Morning? I can't answer that question right now. Just know that the show's not ending. That's all you need to know right now. Mark Fishkin's on the line. Hey, Mark.
Hello. How are you? Happy to you and yours.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say, Trevor had put out there the notion of stories of 2014 to talk about on the show. And when I look back at 2014, obviously I think this is the year that we took one of those giant leaps, right? Yep. You've been at this a long time. I've been at this a long time. And everyone I tell in the real world, I talk about baby steps. Every year it's a baby step. And this year we took a really big step in this country with this game. Yeah. And that's what I'll remember for this year. Well, okay.
If you have just a second here, Mark, I mean, I think it'd be interesting to sort of outline why and how and what impact it might have. I mean, I think you're right, but I still think, and you know, I live in the bubble, you live in the bubble. It's tough for us to see what the general, you know, maybe soccer interested but not really soccer invested public cares about or thinks about the steps that MLS is taking or that American soccer is taking. It still seems like it's it's a big step, but it still seems like it's a relatively smooth thing. It's not like we saw a gigantic spike. I know the numbers were good for the World Cup, Mark, but beyond that, are you talking about in terms of relevance? Is that something we can actually measure?
Yeah, I think it's a year that maybe perhaps some of the ridicule kind of went away finally. I think that some people now, obviously, there's some dinosaurs, you know, guys up in Boston that will take their soccer hate to their graves, and that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
But I think this year is the year where a lot of people really kind of got it for the first time and said, yeah, you know, this is really great, and it's here, and it's either local or there's a minor league team that's local, and it's a lot less of I wish they'd go away to. Yeah, you know, I can really kind of get into this. It's
not a bad point. I appreciate the phone call, Mark. We've got breaking news. I'm going to move on here. I got the openers, I guess, for everybody. 2015 opening week. Full schedule from MLS yet, but we do have this. DC United hosting the LA Galaxy Chicago Fire open the season on Friday, March 6th. DC United, Montreal Impact on Saturday. Vancouver, Toronto on Saturday. Houston, Dynamo, Columbus Crew. Philadelphia Union, Colorado Rapids. Portland Timbers, Real Salt Lake. FC Dallas, San Jose. And then Sunday, Orlando City hosting New York. So your two expansion teams, New York City FC, that is. Your two expansion teams doing battle down at the Citrus Bowl. Sporting Kansas City hosting Bulls, and Seattle hosting the New England Revolution. On the line, 904. You're up. What's up?
Hey, this is Eric from Florida. I just wanted to talk about the kind of the allocation order and how we're going through Cubo and Mixed Diskerud talking about them right now. It seems, I understand MLS and allocation, but it seems that it's almost holding MLS back.
Yeah, sure it is. Right now. Sure it is. And we've argued on this show. Jonathan Tannenwald has proposed that the league, and I've backed him up on this, and I've railed against it, that the league drop the allocation for returning American players because it is a hindrance. That is, look, I don't know that Mixed Diskerud is not in MLS because of the allocation order. He says that's an issue. I'm taking him at his word when he says that. He did walk fairly far down the road with both Portland and Columbus before things fell apart. So I don't know.
Right.
But he says it's an issue. I believe it's an issue. If you want your American, if you want guys like Moadu, Mixed Diskerud, any of them to come back to this league and want to be here, maybe you get rid of that. Maybe you figure out another way for the American players to join the league. I know that they want to guard against a bidding war for these players. I don't know how you do that, but this allocation order issue is a problem.
Yeah. Do you see any time in the future that happening with the powers that be right now?
I mean, I don't know that it's a CBA issue. I don't know that that's going to be a collective issue for all of the players in MLS. Clearly, it's about players coming back into the league or into the league, period, rather than something that could benefit the guys that are already here. So I don't know if that's a CBA issue. I hope so. I want to think that there is a strong streak of common sense up at MLS HQ, and that seems to be something that should be dropped based on common sense. But I really have no sense.
Right.
All right, man. Appreciate the phone call. Anything else?
Yeah, thanks, and I'm going to miss you over the break.
I appreciate that. Get the warm and fuzzies. In fact, I think that's going to do it for us here on a Friday on Soccer Morning, backheel.com. Again, the schedule, last show of 2014 is right now. This is out. It's over. 2014 is over for Soccer Morning. We'll be back on January 8th. That's a Thursday, I do believe. We've got the Christmas holiday, the New Year's holiday. I'm heading to Colorado for 10 days to see family. Maybe if I'm in Colorado, we can do something out there, but I won't be doing shows until January 8th. Thanks to everybody who listened to this show in 2014. We've already gone over this. Thank you very much to Soccerly.com for stepping up and supporting the show in the summer to keep us going to this point. We wish them the best as they re-envision their business over there. Thank you very much to every single guest we had on the show. I can't possibly identify all of them. This was our first full year of shows. We started in April of 2013, but we did a full year of shows in 2014. It's amazing to me that we've been doing this show for 18 months or whatever it is. Incredible. And I think 2015 is going to be a good year. I think 2015 is going to be a fantastic year. That's the best hint I can give you right now. We are looking around. We are talking to people. Soccer Morning's not going anywhere. Again, thank you very much for listening. Please go to iTunes and give us a rating and review. If that's all we ask right now. We can buy some stuff. Backheel.com/store. Buy some stuff. Buy a mug. Buy a t-shirt at 3nilfc.com. Buy a Backheel t-shirt. No, it won't be a Soccer Morning, but there are cool t-shirts over there. Chuck Blazer, man. That t-shirt's fantastic. We should sell those like gangbusters. All right, I'm out. Talk to you guys tomorrow. No, I won't. Damn it. Talk to you guys in 2015 later.
Their corporate plexus ringing in my ear at night.